Today's lecture, we're going to be focusing on plant diversity. Specifically, we need to focus first on what we call the seedless plants. First, let's orient ourselves with what the major plant divisions are. Here, we're talking about the green plants. These are streptophytes. Beneath that, the land plants are called embryophytes. And then you see we have these two major divisions, the non-vascular plants and the vascular plants. So for right now, let us focus on what we call the seedless plants. And notice that this bridges both non-vascular and vascular types of plants. So what do we mean by a seedless plant? Seedless plants, as the name suggests, do not have seeds. They also do not have flowers. These are plants that you probably know and love, such as ferns or horsetails, and are mosses that litter the forest floor, and liverworts. These seedless plants are mostly found in cool, moist, and shaded areas in the understory of a forest. Even walking out in Maryville College Woods, you are likely to find lots and lots of seedless plants. Most of these are found at ground level, so things that you kick around with your feet, or you can have a sit on a log that's covered in moss. These seedless plants reproduce sexually, but as we'll discuss in coming slides in this lecture, some also have the chance to produce asexually during part of their life cycle. And the seedless plants are monophyletic, so it includes an ancestor and all of the descendants of that ancestor within the seedless plants. These seedless plants are really important members of the forest ecosystem because they usually are the first plants to inhabit a new environment. When there's a new clearing in the forest, these are our pioneering species. They can also form a thin layer of soil when they die. So in that way, they provide nutrients to the soil and carbon to the soil to support other life forms around them. They also have, as we'll talk about in coming slides, these root-like structures called rhizoids, which help hold soil in place, preventing mass loss of soil and erosion with big storms. So they have a lot of ecosystem functions that they support in the forest ecosystem. So coming back to our major plant divisions, now we're going to focus on the non-vascular seedless plants. We call the non-vascular seedless plants our bryophytes. These bryophytes include the liverworts, hornworts, and our mosses. The bryophytes represent the oldest extant relatives of early terrestrial plants, extant meaning living relatives today. The bryophytes probably emerged and evolved about 450 million years ago during the Ordovician period. Right now on Earth, there are more than 25,000 species of bryophytes, so very biodiverse group of organisms. They have specialized reproductive organs that are enclosed by other non-reproductive cells, and this is a key characteristic of the bryophytes. Again, they are considered non-vascular plants, and we'll discuss what vascular and non-vascular means in the coming slides. Interestingly, our bryophytes are able to survive harsh environmental conditions, whether that be tundra environments, desert environments. They have these key adaptations that allow them to survive in those places. And again, these bryophytes are represented by mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, with the mosses being the most numerous. Talking specifically about mosses and other bryophytes, they have what we call a cuticle. This cuticle is on the outside, and it serves as a waxy protective coating that allows them to resist dehydration while being on land. So this was probably the largest step in plant evolution, going from the water to the land. Land poses a large challenge for plants. It's extremely dry, and as you and I know, plants need water to survive. So in order to overcome this potential limitation in water, the first early terrestrial plants had to evolve some sort of adaptation that would allow them to thrive and survive on land. So this waxy protective coating is found in our mosses and also our other bryophytes. It prevents against desiccation without dehydrating. We also have another type of adaptation to dry life on land with our stoma. These stomatal pores are another adaptation that help prevent against water loss. This is something that we were exposed to when we were talking about photosynthesis in one of our previous modules. So again, our mosses and bryophytes also have those stomatal pores to prevent against dehydration. Another adaptation that mosses and bryophytes have are these root-like structures called rhizoids. So these rhizoids are not true roots, but they do perform the function of roots, taking in water and minerals from the soil or whatever holdfast it's anchored to, but they're actually not true roots. They do provide stability by acting as an anchor, and the thing that it gloms onto and is steadily holding onto with the rhizoids could be anything from soil to rocks. Okay, so they're pretty shallow. They're not those deeply penetrating roots that you and I are accustomed to growing in our backyard, but they do provide stability in shallow ways. And this allows, for example, mosses and other bryophytes to be the dominant plant form in harsh places like the Arctic tundra, because they don't need really deep roots to penetrate that frozen permafrost. They are able to get away with these shallow roots, these shallow root-like structures called rhizoids. So why are these bryophytes so small? Bryophytes are pretty small for a number of reasons. Number one, they don't make this substance called lignin. Lignin is this woody substance that you see on the outside of trees in the way of bark. It provides a very strong structure to plants, and if you don't have that structure, the taller and taller you build yourself, you're going to fall over. So that is one reason why bryophytes remain so small. Number two, they don't contain true vascular tissue. This is what we mean by vascular tissue, xylem and phloem. And because of this, bryophytes can't support a tall body against the pull of gravity because of not having the physical structure or having the ability to funnel up nutrients and water from the soil with this vascular tissue we call xylem and phloem. To learn more about plant structure and adaptations to land, please watch our TED Ed video done again by the lovely Amoeba sisters. The bryophyte lifestyle is a different type of lifestyle that is pretty foreign to us. We go about our entire lives being diploid, sexually reproducing creatures. The bryophytes, on the other hand, exhibit this thing we call alternation of generations. This means that it goes between the diploid stage, so having two copies of its chromosome, to the haploid stage where it only has one copy. So when we're looking at a moss, we're actually looking at the gametophyte part of the life cycle. This gametophyte is the dominant recognizable stage of the life cycle and the stage that carries out most of the photosynthesis. On the other hand, we have this other part of the life cycle called the sporophyte. The sporophyte is dependent upon the gametophyte for its supply of water and nutrients. So here we have an image of a moss. This fuzzy darker green at the bottom is the gametophyte stage. And then these tall pillars and stalks that are stemming up from the gametophyte is the sporophyte generation. So now we're going to talk about specifically the mosses and how they exhibit their alternation of generations. The moss follows an alternation of generation life cycle like all of the bryophytes. The moss gametophyte generation is haploid, and it produces sexually with the production of gametes, our eggs, and our sperm. These gametes are stemming from specialized structures. So the sperm is developed in the antheridial head in the gametophyte, while the egg is produced by the archegonial head of the gametophyte. When water is introduced into the system, water being very important to the moss life cycle, when water is introduced to the system, this facilitates the fusion of the two gametes, the egg and the sperm. This then brings about the second generation, our sporophyte. Now, the sporophyte generation is diploid, meaning that it has two copies of its chromosomes. This is also the asexual part of the life cycle of our moss. The sporophyte has a capsule called the sporangium, which is inside of the calyptra. I know I'm throwing a lot of words at you, but this will become a little bit more illustrated in the coming slides. Okay, so the sporangium produces the haploid reproductive cells that we call spores. And this happens through meiosis. The sporophyte grows inside the mother during its life, and it remains attached to the parent gametophyte. That's why you see those sporophyte stalks stemming from an individual gametophyte when you're looking at moss. And that's because the gametophyte supplies crucial nutrients and water for sporophyte growth and development. These spores are airborne, and so they get dispersed through the air. They're hoping to land somewhere where they can find soil and water and nutrients where it can germinate into a protonema that allows growth into buds and then eventually into full-blown moss, so the cycle can complete itself.
Mosses alternate between the haploid gametophyte and the diploid sporophyte during their life cycle. The sporophyte generation in bryophytes develops from the gametophyte. Sporophytes receive much of their nutrition from the gametophyte. Spores are produced by meiosis in the capsule of the sporophyte. The spore capsule ripens, bursts, and releases the spores. A spore germinates to form a protonema. The antheridium develops on the male gametophyte. Sperm form within the antheridium. The archegonium develops on the female gametophyte. An egg forms within the archegonium. Sperm are released from the antheridium and swim to the archegonium. Fertilization takes place inside the archegonium and a zygote is formed. The zygote divides by mitosis to form a new sporophyte in the form of a stalk and capsule.
So this is another schematic diagram that details the development of the gametophyte and then the sporophyte within our mosses. I think it does a little bit of a better job letting you know what each stage actually looks like in the wild and how you can recognize this in the Maryville College Woods, for example, or in your backyard. We also have this helpful explanation video that goes through the nitty-gritty of each and every step for you. I do recommend watching it. It's less than 10 minutes long. Okay, going back to our diagram of the major plant divisions, we're now going to be discussing the vascular plants. And you'll see that this encompasses seedless and seed plants as well. But first, what does it mean to be a vascular plant, and when did this feature arise? The first vascular plants on Earth evolved during the Devonian period about 400 million years ago. This is a fossil that is representing one of the very first vascular plants on Earth called Cooksonia. Cooksonia didn't have all of the leaves, the roots, and other structures that you might initially associate with a plant on Earth today, but this is what it's reconstructed to have looked like on early Earth. So this is an imprint, and this is an artist's reconstruction of what the first vascular plant on Earth would have looked like. Some features about the vast diversity of vascular plants that we have on Earth. Number one, they're called trachophytes. And trachea means breathing, and it makes sense that plants of the vascular type would be associated with breathing. So these are the dominant and most conspicuous group of land plants that is on our earth today. We have more than 260,000 species of vascular plants today. So again, wide breadth of biodiversity represented in our vascular plants, and they actually make up more than 90% of the vegetation on our planet. So they do a lot for us, but the question we should ask is, why is this group so successful and so widespread? In order to answer that question, let's go back and think about the mosses again, these fuzzy little things that grow on our rocks and on top of soil and on logs. Remember, these are bryophytes, and they're limited in their habitat because they have to remain nearby pools of water. They rely on water for at least part of their reproduction cycle, and they need at least some periodic wetting periods and episodes to facilitate that alternation of generations that we spoke about. They're also limited in size because of the lack of roots and the absence of lignin reinforcing conducting cells that transport water and nutrients throughout the body. Okay, these conducting cells are housed within something called vascular bundles. And so mosses, they don't have these vascular bundles. What do have vascular bundles are vascular plants. Okay, so this is a cross section of a piece of celery. And if you've ever chomped some celery, you've noticed these stringy bits that kind of hang in your teeth, and you have to like make sure that they're not staying around or not falling into your lap. Those are vascular bundles. And this is one of the key adaptations that allow the vascular plants to proliferate on Earth today. These vascular bundles contain the xylem and the phloem that help transport substances to and from the roots and to and from the stems and the leaves. So unlike the bryophytes, which are most notable as gametophytes, these seedless vascular plants are most notable in their sporophyte form. That is the most recognizable and dominant phase of their life cycle. So the vascular bundle represents one of the key adaptations that allow the vascular plants to be so ubiquitous on our planet, but also they have the presence of lignin. They also have roots, and they have leaves. So let's dig into what all of these mean. So first, we have the water and sugar transport systems, the xylem and the phloem. The xylem is the tissue that is responsible for storage and long-distance transport of water and nutrients here. The tissue consists of conducting cells known as tracheids. The xylem conductive cells incorporate the compound lignin into their walls, and therefore they're described as lignified. So xylem is lignified, and therefore it has a strong structure that's able to be held upright and is rigid. And that's because lignin is a complex polymer. It has so many different polysaccharides of really, really great size, to be honest. It's hard to break down. Even after a plant dies, it's extremely tough to break down lignin. Only a few types of microbial organisms on Earth are really good at breaking down lignin. On the other hand, we have the sugar transport called phloem. Phloem is the second type of vascular tissues. As written here, it transports sugars, but it also transports proteins and other solutes throughout the plant. Unlike the xylem, the phloem cells are divided into sieve elements. These are called conducting cells, and together the xylem and the phloem tissues form the vascular system in our plants. So they both work together to allow the vascular plant to receive nutrients and water from its surroundings and not the immediate locale in which it's situated. So that's one key adaptation. Another key adaptation is the presence of a true root. So if you remember with our bryophytes, they only have these root-like structures. They don't have true roots. Instead, they have rhizoids. But with the vascular plants, we do have a true root system. Here's a cross-section of a root. So if the root was growing down into the soil and you picked it up and you sliced like this, that's the orientation at which you're viewing the root here. We have the epidermis that coats the outside of the root system. In between the epidermis and the stele, we have what we call the cortex. And then we can zoom in on this centermost portion here called the stele. We have the outside that is lined again by another type of dermis, but this time it is the endodermis, okay, because it's on the inside of the cortex. Here's the phloem vascular tissue and the xylem vascular tissue. And here we have the pericycle or the cambium outlined just beneath the endodermis, but before we get to the vascular bundle of the xylem and the phloem. So that is the root. And next we have the leaves. So this is a diagram of the leaf structure in our vascular plants. Notice again, we have this cuticle, that waxy coating that coats the outside of the leaf to keep it protected from drying out. We have the upper epidermis just underneath the cuticle. We have these elongated cells called the palisade mesophyll. This provides somewhat of a scaffolding and a structure to our leaf cell. Inside here, we have veins or vascular bundles. And inside our vein or vascular bundle is where we have the vascular tissue. We have the xylem and the phloem, which is wrapped up by the bundle sheath cell. So all of this together constitutes a vein or a vascular bundle. Next, we have the spongy mesophyll cells, which are not the elongated type of morphology we see with the palisade. Instead, it's just as its name suggests, it's pretty spongy. And then at the bottom, we have the guard cells that flank to the left and the right of the stomatal pore or the stoma here, which regulates release and uptake of gases and release and uptake of water. So moving through our plant divisions again, notice we've not talked about the vascular seed plants. These are our spomatophytes, our gymnosperms, and our angiosperms, which are our flowering plants. These will be discussed in our next lecture, so stay tuned.